Hi everyone, welcome to day 1 of Unit 4. Today we're going to talk about slope. Our whole new unit is actually about lines, so before we can do that, we need to know about slope. So, let's do our vocab. Slope is the ratio of a vertical change to a horizontal change. Usually when we're talking about these changes, we're talking about points on a graph or ordered pairs. But yeah, you guys probably know slope as rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x, which is correct. But we actually have a formula to help us find slope. So the formula starts off with m equals, because m is what we use for the variable for slope. Anytime we're trying to find a variable, we just have m. So the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All of these variables are talking about coordinates from an ordered pair. So the y-coordinate from the second point minus the y-coordinate from the first point, the x-coordinate from the second point minus the x-coordinate of the first point. That'll give us a change in the y values over the change in the x values, also known as the rise over the run. Okay. Parallel lines are lines that have the same slope but never intersect, so knowing these slopes will help us identify if two lines are parallel or not. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes, so different signs, and the flip of the fraction for their slopes. So they look similar, but they're actually the complete opposite. And if they have that kind of characteristic, then that means that they are perpendicular lines. Because in algebra, we're not using protractors to try to figure out if they're actually intersecting at 90 degrees. So we're going to use the math to go ahead and back up our claim that these are perpendicular lines. Okay? So there are different types of slope, and apparently I never got rid of this. Fun. And it depends on how the line is formed. Okay? So if the line is heading up, that is a positive slope. If the line is heading down, it's a negative slope. If the line just goes straight across, it's going to give you a zero slope. And if it's straight up and down like this, that's an undefined slope. So let me scroll up so you can see. Okay? The reason they're called this is because when you actually calculate slope for these kind of lines, all the lines that are going up, you get a positive number. When you have all these lines going down, when you calculate their slope, they all give you a negative number. A horizontal line, if you calculate their slope, it'll come out to be 0. And if for an undefined one, a vertical line, we call it undefined because we don't actually have a real number we can use. Because what happens when you do rise over run, you'll get a number divided by 0, which is not possible. So we just call it undefined. Okay? A way to help you remember these and just like identifying them, okay, and being able to identify them is really helpful, because if you're doing a multiple choice test, you can eliminate a lot of answers just because you already know this is supposed to be negative, so the actual number should be negative. So I'm going to introduce you to Slope Dude. So Slope Dude actually has all that information just written on his face. So we're going to draw his face together. So for his eyes, we have a negative sign and a positive sign. And we draw a line with a negative number over the negative sign, because that's going to create an eyebrow. We draw a line with a positive slope over the positive sign. His nose is made up of a vertical line, if I can find it. There it is. Which has an undefined slope. And his mouth is made up of a horizontal line. Again, if I can find it. And he's got his little like cheeks that tell us it's 0. 0 slope. So if you can draw his face, you can figure out if you can match each slope with its kind of line. Okay? He's not a very friendly guy, but he's there. So, moving on to some examples. So you'll have to find slope in a number of different areas. You guys have already done it with a graph. You're pretty capable of doing rise over run because you did a lot of practice with that Did I skip a page? Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. So, finding the slope from a graph. When you're trying to find the slope from a graph, you're going to pick 2 points. It doesn't really matter the 2 points. Most of the time, I'm already going to have 2 points picked for you just to make sure there's no confusion about where it's crossing. Or I'll give you a bunch of points and you can pick from them. You pick 2 points, and then what you're going to do is you're going to count the vertical distance between the points, so how much distance up and down. Then you're going to count the horizontal distance across between the 2 points. And then to make your slope, you're just going to put the vertical over the horizontal distances, and you get your slope. And you just make sure you simplify it. So let's try an example. And for each one, we're also going to find the slope, and we're going to find the parallel slope and the perpendicular slope to it. Okay? So I'm just going to pick 2 points on this graph. I try to, if I can, doesn't always work out very well for me, but I do try to just pick the intercepts, because some of the times they're actually pretty clear, and it's already given me a starting place to look, so I don't have to look too hard. So it's clearly crossing the x-axis here, and it's also crossing the y-axis here. So I just plot those 2 points. That way it gives me a visual of where I can see them. Okay? And then I'm going to count the distance. So first I need to do the vertical distance, so up and down. Well, let's see if I can draw it. So this distance from here to this line, because that's where that point is, that went up 5 units. Okay? Then I can go and figure out the horizontal distance. So I go this way and count how far across it went. This one went to the right 5 units. So I would just write 5 over 5. Now the reason it's a positive 5 is because I'm going up towards the positive numbers. And the reason this is positive 5 is because I'm going to the right towards the positive numbers. Okay? So going up and to the right, those are positive actions. If I went down, that would be a negative action. If I went to the left, it would be a negative action. Okay? So up and right, positive, down and left, negative. So I just go ahead and put my vertical over horizontal, 5 over 5. I couldn't write my fraction. Just write it as a fraction, guys. And then I go ahead and simplify it. 5 divided by 5 equals 1. So 1 is my slope. So to find my parallel slope, well, parallel slopes are the same, so it's going to be the exact same number, 1. Perpendicular slopes to this are the opposite reciprocal. So I'm going to flip 1 over, which is just going to give me 1 over 1, which reduces to 1 still. And I'm going to change the sign. I'm going to have the opposite sign. So this actually becomes, the perpendicular slope is a negative 1. Okay? Now this example, I figure out my 2 points. I have a y-intercept right here at 1. My x-intercept is not very good, so I actually only have, I'm like crossing and a half, which I don't want to use. So I'm going to use this one here at 2, negative 1. So I'm going to find my vertical distance. So here, I'm going to start at this point, and I end up going down 3. So because I went down, that is a negative motion. And here I'm going to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So because I went to the right, it's a positive motion. So that's what I'm going to write. So I have negative 3 over positive 4, which doesn't need to be reduced, so negative 3/4 is my slope. My parallel slope will be the exact same, so also negative 3/4. My perpendicular slope will be the flip version of this fraction, and I change the sign. So this will become positive 4 over 3. Okay? So you guys are going to try these two on your own. I already have clear points for you to pick, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay? Now, given 2 points, we're going to use this formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? That way, all we need are 2 ordered pairs, and we can find the slope. So, find the slope of the lines given these points, identify a parallel and perpendicular slope. So, here are my points. What I like to do first is to go through and label. This is going to be my point 1, and this will be my point 2. So that means that this is x1, okay, and this is y1 right here. So I just like to label them so I don't confuse them. And then this would be x2. Oof, I'm trying to do this with a mouse pad. This is not easy. And this would be y2. Okay? Knowing that, I can go ahead and fill in this formula. So y2 would be 3 minus, the minus is going to be there no matter what, minus y1, which is 4, and then x2, 6, minus x1, which is negative 1. So it gets set up like this. 3 minus 4 over 6 minus the negative 1. Now, 2 negatives will make a positive, so you can end up adding. But you just need to make sure that those minus signs are definitely in your problem. Do not replace it with a negative sign. Okay? So then I just go ahead and simplify. 3 minus 4 gives me negative 1. 6 minus negative 1 really means 6 plus 1 gives me 7. So I have negative 1 over 7, which I can't reduce, so I can just leave it as negative 1 over 7, or negative 1/7. My parallel slope will be the same, and my perpendicular slope will be the flip version, so 7 over 1, and lose the negative sign, so make it positive. So it just becomes 7. You guys are going to try this on your own. Now, finding a slope from an equation, it's important to know what kind of equation we're looking at. So slope-intercept form is your most basic kind of equation. It's y equals mx plus b. And it's really helpful because the m right here, that stands for your slope. So in slope-intercept form, the number with the x value is your slope. So if you already have it in this form, all you got to do is like, oh, it's a number right here with the x, and that's your slope. So example 3, find the slope from the following line. This is in the form y equals a number times x plus another number or minus another number. So to find my slope, I look at the x term. I'm going to pick the number. So this number right here is my slope. So m is 3. The parallel m is also 3. But the perpendicular is the opposite reciprocal. So I flip it over and make it a different sign. Make it negative. Okay? And now you guys are going to try this one on your own. And that's it. So if you have any questions, please write them down. I'd be happy to help. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye.